Mando! From the vast deserts of Tatooine to the vast deserts of Arvala 7 and back to the vast deserts of Tatooine, the Mandalorian returns with Baby Yoda right by his side. This is the way. Welcome to Channel 8.5. Hello, and thank you for joining us at Channel 8.5, a show about movies and TV and pop culture. My name is Joe Galena.
And I'm Andrew Hanna.
Andrew, how are you doing today?
Baby Yoda is back in my life, Joe. How do you think I'm doing?
Wonderfully.
I'm doing great.
Because Baby Yoda cures all.
This week, we're going into the recap of Season 1 of The Mandalorian, as well as discussing the Season 2 premiere, which came out this last weekend on Disney+. We're going to be going to spoilers, so if you have not seen any of Season 1, please do not continue listening. Come back after you do watch the show. But I'll throw it over to you, Joe. What were your thoughts on Season 1?
Season 1 to me was probably my favorite TV show of last year. And that's not hyperbole. I'm not kidding. I loved it so much. And you know why I think I loved it? Is not for Baby Yoda, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
And not just because it was Star Wars, but I do love Star Wars.
Yeah.
I do like that it came out week to week in the same way that it's coming out now, because it allowed me to talk with other people about it. And the show was so good enough to support that in the way that Game of Thrones did too.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And it is, in my humble and controversial opinion, that The Mandalorian is probably the best thing to come out of the Star Wars universe in terms of film and television.
I don't think that's controversial. Well, wait a minute. Are you mean
everything? All of it.
Okay, calm down, sir.
I told you, controversial, but it is, in my humble opinion, it's my favorite. It's everything that I love to see in Star Wars. I think it was the perfect combination of the fun campiness of the originals and then the dark political nature of the prequels, with the added cherry on top that none of it resembled the newest films in the least bit.
No, it was doing what Star Wars is supposed to be, and it's supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
And that's what The Mandalorian was for Season 1. It was, for all the crime lords and syndicates that he visits, it was just a fun adventure.
Yeah.
It's simple storytelling done really, really well.
It's basically a Western set in space. A lot of the character and story plots, like the archetypes from Westerns, have been fit into this, even down to the music. But I think possibly my favorite thing about this is that each episode was a short film in a way that is unlike most television shows that rely on pre-existing mythos that is so well known. I mean, it would be easy to be leaning on the pre-existing knowledge and still have a large enough audience to watch this. But it felt like Jon Favreau had this back to basics mentality going into this, which makes it so much more accessible to audiences that have not necessarily followed the Star Wars saga with dedication in the way that most people who do watch Star Wars things, I also think that it granted that flexibility given the subject matter as the Mandalorians, because the Mandalorians haven't really been explored in the Star Wars films. It was touched on in the Clone War animated show, but not a lot of people saw that. And it was a phenomenal show, but not many people watched it.
No, the movies don't really do it. Boba Fett was the Mandalorian that we knew of. And there was one in the prequels, the Changeling, who is, also has the Mandalorian armor. But really you don't know anything about Boba Fett other than that he's got a cool helmet.
Yeah, I think Boba Fett made his first appearance in the Star Wars Christmas special. That was initially where Boba Fett first made his appearance.
So there was nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I think Jon Favreau is going to have a Christmas special this Christmas.
To redeem Star Wars for Christmas time?
I think so, yeah. But I enjoyed that he is allowing the show to be more than just a Star Wars film or Star Wars television show, specifically in terms of genre, because Star Wars could arguably be its own genre, or really created the genre it lives in. But instead, he borrows archetypal story plots, like I was saying, in the characters, and then mixes it to create these episodes that are both familiar, but also brand new because of kind of the mixture of elements. Episodes like Sanctuary, which is basically Seven Samurai or A Bug's Life. And then you have an episode like The Prisoner, which is a heist or prison break type episode. So I think I love that every episode feels like it's covering a new genre.
It's a nice serialized adventure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
which is the origins of Star Wars. They are based on
Mhm.
serials of old and Flash Gordon.
But even the original Star Wars was really kind of like a World War II story when you really think about it.
The TIE fighters fighting,
Yeah.
all the footage, that's what they based the shooting style on was old, war documentaries.
Yeah, yeah, like the dogfights, but even just the Empire itself and Darth Vader, and they're basically like Hitler and the Third Reich. An interesting thing about Sanctuary, the Seven Samurai episode, it was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, the
Mhm.
daughter of Ron Howard, for anyone who doesn't know. And in the collection, which is this docu-series they have on Disney Plus, which is basically about the making of The Mandalorian, she mentions that she remembers her father feeling bad about leaving one more child with her mother to watch at home. So he took Bryce Dallas Howard to Japan for this business trip. And during the business trip, he meets with George Lucas and Akira Kurosawa for dinner.
Yeah.
And she talks about how she remembers like falling asleep on Ron Howard's chest while listening to the three of them speak. And I think it's so interesting that she ends up making the episode that is basically the perfect marriage between George Lucas and Akira Kurosawa's works.
This show does come the closest to following through on the nonsensical thing that a lot of directors do when they do genre stuff or Marvel stuff, right? Because, Captain America Civil War, all the stuff or not Civil War, Winter Soldier.
Hmm.
Everybody, the Russo brothers and all that go, "Oh, this is gonna be you're gonna be blown away. This is gonna be like a 1970s political thriller. We're doing all the president's men, but it's Captain America." And then you watch it and you go, "No, it's not. It's just Captain America." That's
Yeah.
all it is. It's not a political thriller. You just got Robert Redford to come in and be menacing, and that's great, but it's
Was
not.
Robert Redford in that?
Yeah, Robert Redford, he's the what you find out, movie's 10 years old now. Avengers is the biggest
I've
thing ever.
never
I don't
seen.
care.
Yeah,
I'm spoiling it.
that's fine.
Robert Redford is the, Shield chairman guy who is supposed to be an ally to Nick Fury. And then it turns out in the end he's part of Hydra, the evil Nazi organization that has infiltrated Shield. But the turn to have Robert Redford, movie star Robert Redford, Sundance Kid, as the bad guy, I thought it was wonderful. And he's really good because Robert Redford is a perfect guy to get for those movies because he is a movie star. You
Yeah,
put his name on the marquee. So when he shows up, he knows how to be on the screen, man. And that's why I really liked the reveal.
in the most traditional sense of the word, movie star.
Yes, dude. Like, because he's one half of Butch and Sundance. Like,
Yeah,
he is a movie star. So you put him in a Marvel movie, which is supposed to be a big blockbuster. Robert Redford, maybe he might not be the best actor in the world. Who cares? He commands the screen and he
no, I
wears
completely agree.
fantastic suits doing it. But anyway, it's not all the President's Men though, is what I'm saying.
I love him so much that my gamer tag is Sundance Kid.
Yes, it is. In Butch and Sundance though, he only has like 17 lines the whole movie. He doesn't really talk that much
No, the
in
dude
that
is
movie.
like Max from Mad Max, basically.
Yeah, he just kind of sits there and he does a lot of eyebrows and a lot
Yeah,
of
he's
just sideways glances at Paul Newman.
easiest paycheck that man has ever made.
But you totally buy it too. And the two of them together is so great. I mean, them together
Oh,
in Bitch and Can
and then
Dance,
the
and then they're in
Sting.
the Sting together.
Ugh,
And Paul Newman, obviously, also. You put two movie stars like that together,
yeah.
and it was just kind of magic in a way you don't see that often now.
It reminds me as if you put, like, Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise in the same room.
No, you know what? That's a good point. Like the Ocean's movies did it.
We don't have movie stars in the way that you talk about Paul Newman and Robert Redford. I think Tom Cruise, in my opinion, is still the last quintessential movie star that you can think of.
Who would you put opposite Tom Cruise as another movie star to stand equal to him? Not in terms of just charisma, but in movie stardom, because there's so few. I'm trying to think
Yeah.
of like you need
I
to put
mean,
like a Brad Pitt in there.
Tom Hanks is one of those as well.
Oh, that'd be such an odd dynamic
It
of
would be, yeah,
tones.
exactly. I think Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise are a dynamic as well, but, yeah, I can't think of any traditional actor that could be put against Tom Cruise when you really think about it.
We talked about it last week, but Rebecca Ferguson in the Mission Impossible movies stood toe to toe with him, but
Mhm.
she's more of an unknown in Mission Impossible. She's not a movie star yet, although she should be after Doctor Sleep performance. But
Oh, yeah.
that's a good question. I want to see
But
just
you
Tom
look
Cruise going against people now.
but you look at, like, those combinations, especially of just, like, the female male characters like Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. I think
Mm.
that Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling are basically that combo
Yeah, that
in
worked
modern
really well.
form, you know what I mean? Like, they just every movie they've been in what, 3 or 4 movies together?
A bunch. Crazy Stupid
Yeah.
Love. Um,
La La Land is the obvious, and
La La
then
Land is the obvious one.
1920s, like, mob.
Oh, the one with Sean Penn.
Yeah,
Yeah. Gangster Squad, that's what it's called.
Gangster Squad, that's right. Yeah, yeah. What was your favorite episode from season 1 of The Mandalorian?
I was gonna ask you the same thing too because it
Yeah.
sounds like yours was Sanctuary.
It might not be my favorite, just as a filmmaker to see Seven Samurai be repurposed in the Star Wars universe was so exciting for me, but I think Reckoning is probably my favorite episode.
That's the penultimate episode, the one where
Mhm.
when they kill Werner Herzog in that episode, I was so shocked because
I
I
was
loved
so
Werner
sad.
Herzog, and he doesn't
He's
even get a name,
so
he's just the client.
When I saw him first show up on screen, I was like, "Wait, what?"
I was so happy.
And that's the thing about this is that it felt as though the filmmakers were having so much fun all the way through, and you felt their love for Star Wars. And to have Werner Herzog, you talked about this before, just like he was committed.
Yes, he commit to the bit, and it's so funny to listen to interviews of him too because when he talks about Baby Yoda, he does the quintessential Werner Herzog thing, and he goes, "I saw him, and I wept like a baby. I
Yeah.
cried, and I wept tears of joy."
So I want to actually go into the whole Baby Yoda thing and why I love him and I think audiences love him so much. But a really funny story that Deborah Chow, the director of the third episode,
The Sin,
yeah, The Sin, she
that's the
tells.
one I'm gonna talk about, by the way.
Is that your favorite?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
but
that
keep
is
going with your
actually,
story.
but she's talking about how she's directing Werner Herzog, and Werner's so wrapped up in the baby that he begins to speak to the baby and direct the baby directly, like, trying to speak to him, and he forgot that it was just a puppet, and so when Chow and her crew went on to shoot reference shots for the CGI artists, Werner began to call them cowards and, like, curse them out and told them that they needed to commit to the magic and not give the plate shots to the CGI guys and make them use the puppet shots. And so John Favreau ends up saying in like this round table that they're talking about, he's like, he was right in the end of the day. Like even in the CG versions, they would not allow the artists to allow it to do anything that the puppet itself could not do, which is just so interesting to me. But
And it's so smart.
and I want to go into just that whole aspect of it. But Werner is so funny that he's just such a like a passionate filmmaker.
And he has the funniest line in the entire season to me, and in that episode, in the penultimate episode, where Carl Weathers, who is the bounty hunter, the boss of the bounty hunters, and Mando,
I know what you're talking about.
they bring Baby Yoda, or they pretend to bring Baby Yoda in his
Yeah.
cradle, but the cradle is closed, and he goes, "Okay, the baby's sleeping. We can't look at it right now." And Werner Herzog goes, "We will all be quiet."
I bust up every time I hear that line.
I laughed so much. I rewatched season 1
Yeah, I did too.
yesterday too, and I knew it was coming, and I still laughed so hard.
He really is my favorite in the first season, like my favorite character. Him
I
and
mean,
Quill. I love Quill too.
oh, Quill too. I mean, Nick Nolte as Quill, just I've never seen anybody match the voice to a character so much to the fact that Nick Nolte and this character work.
Yeah,
Just
and
he's
it
so
was
gruff and straightforward and just doesn't care about any of the nonsense. The fact that his line is "I have spoken" and then just walks away all the time. It's so great.
it really is. And it was actually played by this petite woman who would wear a mechanical prosthetic and would need to match Nolte's voiceover. It's just so cool how it came together so perfectly. But so the third episode, that's your favorite one?
My favorite is the third one, The Sin, and it's the episode where Mando hands over Baby Yoda
Mhm.
to Werner Herzog, who essentially is Nazi scientist, and then makes the decision to no break his code, the bounty hunter code, and take Baby Yoda back.
It really is the inciting incident of the series as a whole.
Hmm.
Might agree that that is probably my favorite, but I think the just all the elements, maybe it's not the reckoning, it's redemption, because that's when you hear the two stormtroopers that are
Jason Sudeikis and Adam Pally.
they're so funny in this. But everyone, I mean, every like you had Bill Burr.
Amy Sedaris shows up for one
I
episode.
mean, it's so cool.
They do the smart thing too of they get comedians to come in and just do little bits for one episode
Hmm.
that really brings a lot of energy
Yeah.
to it, and I think that's smart too.
Oh no, I
Like
completely
Jason
agree.
Sudeikis
Yeah.
and Adam Pally coming in and they do a little, 5-10 minute bit at the beginning of the episode,
And
and
it's
it's fun.
John Favreau even mentions it, and it gave me that impression. It's like he wanted to make this Rosencrantz and Guildenstern type show where you're exploring these kind of fifth business characters that you would otherwise not hear about, but still kind
Mhm.
of dive into them. And these two stormtroopers that are these lower level enlisted men, this is the type of conversation they're having is, one is trying to boss the other one around because he's likely the newbie, and they're just bored while they deal with this one task that they got that day, while this larger conflict is playing out in the background. But they're arguing about looking at a baby. It really captures the original spirit of Star Wars.
I was gonna ask this later when we talked about the first episode of season 2, but I'm gonna ask it now. Did the humor of Adam Pally and Jason Sudeikis and Amy Sedaris, right? They bring a really modern sensibility and a modern comedic tone
Yeah, no, I completely
to
agree,
it.
yeah.
Did it take you out of the world of Star Wars? Because that's a tone that Star Wars traditionally does not take, and it's a tone that The Last Jedi took with Poe Dameron when he goes, "Holding for Hux, still holding. Can you hear me?" And it's a weird comedic moment of, do they have cell phones? Do they know what holding is
Yeah.
in Star Wars? And it did take me out of it at that point, and it did take me out of it in The Mandalorian, but I didn't care because the energy was there and it was fun.
That's a good question because I asked myself the same thing during those comedic scenes. And at first it pulled me out, but in the sense that I had to ask myself, okay, is this working? But I think I liked it a lot because it gave the impression that these were real people occupying the space as if they live in it day to day. I love the original Star Wars, but it truly did feel as though everyone was playing a part in the larger plot. So they tend to speak with the bravado of a high stakes situation. Whereas The Mandalorian gave you the impression that these characters didn't just come into existence to serve that scene or that plot point. They existed long before and will continue to exist after the scene. Essentially, that they're realistically occupying the space in which they exist.
Bill Burr's character is, and it's funny, you can always tell the comedians
Yeah.
in these things
Yeah.
too, because Bill Burr's dialogue also in his episode, which actually is my least favorite episode of the season, is that prison break episode. Bill Burr brings a really kinetic energy to it as well, a lot like his stage persona too, of cutting and biting the whole time.
Yeah, and that's what I liked about this is that it didn't restrain itself to Star Wars as a genre, rather as a world, and I think that allowed them to expand it into different genres as well as different kinds of
Mhm.
characters. So you did have the grandiose characters like Moff Gideon and Werner Herzog, but you also had the minor characters who were meant to be everyday people worrying about everyday things. I appreciate that he brought Star Wars down to this,
Small scale.
yeah, small scale conflicts.
You can make the argument that in the pilot, the very first 15 to 20 minutes actually look kind of cheap. I realized as I was watching it again, because it is very small.
It's his armor. It almost feels as though it was just a guy who put together a bunch of pieces of plastic. It looks very homemade, but that's how Boba Fett's armor looked when you think about it. It looks very beaten and
And we'll get to that in season 2
yeah,
also.
exactly.
It also gets upgraded later on in season 1 too by the armor who I love, and
Oh,
we didn't see
she's
her die, so
so
she's
cool.
probably coming
I
back.
love the fur, the gold helmet, her just the way she speaks, everything about her
Mhm.
was just so cool. John Favreau's, went a step further with the whole back to basics thing, stretching into the effects of the first season, most notably Baby Yoda being a puppet. I think he wanted to avoid something that's called the uncanny valley. Have you heard that term before?
Yeah.
So, for those of you who don't know the term uncanny valley, it refers to a threshold of perception when observing human like robots or CGI, where the more realistic they look, the more appealing they are, but to a point. And within this specific threshold, they begin to look revolting or creepy. It's like the feeling you got when you watch Princess Leia and Tarkin CGI'd into the new trilogy. That
In Rogue One.
something looks off about them. But having Baby Yoda be a puppet just harkens back to the original Star Wars. And, very few creatures or aliens in The Mandalorian actually are completely CGI.
It's also very cute. Disney knows how to make cute animals.
Yeah.
They figured it out when they did Robin Hood, where in 1950s, when they made Robin Hood be a sexy fox. Once they
Hmm.
figured that out, they were like, "Sky's the limit. Sexy, cute animals for the rest of time from Mickey Mouse."
Exactly. But going back to the special effects in The Mandalorian, I think what we're starting to see is we found this equilibrium in film and television in regard to using CGI and effects. Because you look at even just Doctor Slate, they didn't decide to fall in line with the fad of CGIing old actors into the sequels and things like that. They just went with the old way of doing things of just getting someone who looks close enough, you know? And I
Mhm.
feel like Jurassic Park to this day, in my opinion, remains the gold standard for using CGI because it was a perfect balance of practical animatronics and CGI. I think that we're starting to see people realize that just because you can do anything, that it doesn't mean that you should.
Exactly, which is a very Jurassic Park-like way to look at it.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Jeff Goldblum taught us that in Jurassic Park, just
It's
because you can doesn't mean you should.
yeah, he said, "Your scientists were too busy trying to find out if they can create dinosaurs. They didn't stop to think if they should."
Uh-huh, see? It all comes back around.
Yeah, exactly.
Making Baby Yoda an actual puppet, though, was so smart because it does give it weight,
Yeah.
and it gives it a tangibility, and it makes it real. You can tell that that is an actual thing that is there.
Yeah, and there's something about having a human in the room control that puppet because they, like actors, make decisions in the moment inspired by whatever energy is in the room. They're not constrained by the pre-visualizations that they have for the CGI that, okay, well, now the thing is going to do this and it's just this green tennis ball type thing. It's you're opening the process up to the truly magical part of filmmaking. And I know that sounds cheesy, but the most memorable moments I had on set came from the energy in the room giving way to just these unplanned, spontaneous moments that you could have never planned for in pre-production. And there's something about an actor or a puppeteer making a decision on their own that is unlike what a CGI effect could do because the CGI effect can only do what you tell it to do.
Was it odd to you that nobody knew what the Force was in season 1? Everybody is so confounded by the fact that when Mando describes what Baby Yoda did, stopped the Mudhorn with the Force, and he describes it, and everybody goes, "Well, I didn't believe it until I saw what Baby Yoda stopped that fire." The Jedi have been, it's only been like 50 years since the Jedi disappeared. It baffles me that nobody writes anything down in the Star Wars
Well, and
universe.
it's technically only 5 years after the events of the Return of the Jedi,
Return of
so
the
I
Jedi.
would think that they would still create kind of a new Jedi Order maybe? I don't know.
But that, and see, this is the thing, is people would know Darth Vader. They would know the second in command of the Empire was a space wizard.
Yeah,
We saw
yeah.
in Rogue One, right? Even though that's before the New Hope, we saw in Rogue One he massacred that hallway,
Mhm.
and he's just tossing dudes left and right with his mind.
Yeah, I never understood the whole concept of the Jedi being this myth.
Even in A New Hope,
Yeah.
the one of the very first scenes when we're introduced to Darth Vader's choking powers, and the Imperial officer goes, "You and your outdated religion." But it was like 20 years ago that the Jedi was just around.
The armor talks about the Jedi and how they were enemies and things like that, which there
Hmm.
is a lot of history. Like I was looking back at the Mandalorian history, and we meet Din Djarin, who is our main character in the Mandalorian, during a time of disarray amongst the Mandalorians, as we know, shortly after something called the Great Purge, which I assume we'll learn more about. And what's interesting is that the black lightsaber or the dark saber that shows up in the
Dark
last,
saber.
yeah, is
Oh, so metal.
that Gus Fring or Moff Gideon, played by Giancarlo Esposito, who, I mean, is great in everything he's in. What the hell, dude?
He gets to be the main bad guy in this. He gets to be the main bad guy in The Boys,
Yeah,
and he gets to be the main bad guy in something else this year too, and I can't remember what it
he's
is.
so good.
I hope we're probably gonna learn more about the dark saber also. More than likely.
It's actually a Mandalorian ancestral weapon akin to like
Mhm.
the Elder Wand in Harry Potter, and it was created by the first Mandalorian to ever become a Jedi, and then after he passed away, it was just kept in the Jedi Temple until his descendants, which were like this group of extremists that wanted to bring the Mandalorians back together, so they wanted to retrieve this dark saber to help reuniting the people of Mandalore, but then they also teamed up with Darth Maul, but he turns on them and then basically is on Mandalore, and then he's driven out by Ahsoka Tano, who is going to apparently show up later in the second season.
Yeah, apparently it's gonna be Rosario Dawson.
Yeah. But the Darksaber is basically his fabled weapon is now kind of showing up, and I have a feeling it's going to tie into Din Djarin, the main Mandalorian in the show, maybe being the person to reunite the Mandalorians once more.
And that's a great place to, I think, go into season 2.
Yeah, so spoilers ahead. I'll put time codes in the description. It's likely going to be for the rest of the episode, so keep that in mind.
A lot of those questions in season 2, episode 1, which is the only one we've seen yet, haven't seen any of the rest of them. But a lot of the questions that we got at the end of season 1 don't come up in the first episode of season 2.
What do you mean?
Is Moff Gideon what's Moff Gideon gonna do? Is he coming back for vengeance? Darksaber. A lot of those things are just kind of left off, and it really season 2, episode 1 is just a normal episode, really.
Yeah.
Mando goes off, he wanders into town like the gunslinger, he helps some people and goes about his business. You know, there's it's really segmented like that in the same way that a lot of the mid-season season 1 episodes were.
Which I almost appreciate because I think they parsed it out, like you were saying, to just covering one thing, and that's finding Baby Yoda's people. That's really the driving force of episode 1 of season 2, because he's just trying to find more Mandalorians so as to help him find Baby Yoda's people. And
Yes.
I think if they would have just brought back the whole Moff Gideon thing and all that, all those questions would have muddied the water, because in the end of
Too
the
much too
day,
fast.
yeah, exactly. And Moff Gideon breaking out of his TIE fighter at the end is not information that Din Djarin has.
True.
So it almost makes sense that he's kind of going about his business, and that whole greater conflict will likely always work its way into the latter half of every season. The beginning of every season is probably going to be like the small missions that he has to achieve or has to take in order to work toward the whole Baby Yoda storyline. And then later on, you start to see kind of the Empire's warlords start to work their way in.
What did you think of the first episode of season 2?
I liked it a lot. I thought that,
Titled The Marshal.
yeah, I mean, it went back to the Wild West feel. I mean, everyone had Western accents when you think about it.
Timothy Oliphant plays the titular
Yeah,
marshal,
I love Timothy Oliphant, but I loved it. I mean, I love that they went into the Sand
the
People,
Tusken Raiders.
the Tusken Raiders, and
The Sand People, it's a
yeah.
slur. You can't they only they can use that word, Andrew.
Well, I am technically a sand person, so
Ah, it's I'm
that's
not allowed to say
borderline. Go
anything.
ahead, say it, Joe. I'll let you.
I can't say anything.
As a sand
Not
person.
allowed.
No, but yeah, I love that they brought them back in, and I was kind of apprehensive of going back to Tatooine
Does
because
this show have a Tatooine? Star Wars
Star
itself has a
Wars
Tatooine
itself,
problem.
yeah.
Star Wars needs to leave Tatooine. You know when Luke in A New Hope goes, "Well, this is the most backwater place around. Nothing ever happens here." I'm like, "Bro,
Everything happens here.
everything's happening on Tatooine. What are you talking about? This sounds like a you problem, man."
That should be Tatooine's tourist tagline.
I mean, they got pod races. They got these giant crate dragons that destroy everything.
But I love that Timothy Oliphant is literally riding one of Anakin Skywalker's engines from his pod racer.
I thought that was a little unnecessary. Like you didn't need to do
You didn't
that.
need to do it, but I was like, I'm in for it. But I think you have to go back to Tatooine because that's where Boba Fett was last seen.
Yeah, the last, Mandalorian when Mando goes to the boxing ring, essentially,
Hmm.
in the very beginning of the episode, and talks to Gor Koresh, one of the crime bosses there, because you always get information from crime bosses next to boxing rings. It's just
Naturally.
what you do.
Yeah.
Of course, it's like the beginning of the movie Snake Eyes, which no one's ever seen, and that's why I think I like this. I was like, oh, we're doing boxing ring stuff, Snake Eyes, let's do it.
Hmm.
But it was kind of a fake out, right? Where he goes in, talks to Gor Koresh, and says, "All right, I've heard of a Mandalorian. It's on Tatooine." And then Mando goes, "I've been on Tatooine a bunch, and I've never heard of this Mandalorian.
Yeah.
But all right, I'll go check it out." And I liked the fake out of it
But it's not a
because
fake out.
it's exactly because it's both true and it's
Yeah,
not true.
exactly.
Because
Yeah.
Timothy Oliphant Cobb Vanth
Yeah.
is his character name, is wearing the armor. He's not a Mandalorian, but then Boba Fett does then show up at the end.
Yeah.
So there is a Mandalorian there, just not what we expected.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually think the fight scenes are a little bit more refined this season. I felt like the first few episodes of the first season were kind of clunky, their fight scenes.
I liked that though. I liked that Mando just kind of felt like a dude just sort of, magooing his way around. And just, he'd get smacked around and he'd fall down.
No, I'm
And
okay with
he's
that.
kind of clumsy like Rocky, or he's just like bashing dudes in the head. And he's not really like he's
not
not, this
refined.
acrobatic
Yeah.
fighter, but he gets the job done.
No, but even in the times where it's supposed to be like that scene that shows, oh, he's a great fighter, it felt like it was very kind of rudimentary fight scenes and things like that. But in this, I mean, I love the jetpacks and all that stuff. Like, it's just so cool. I know it feels like fan service in a lot of ways, but it was a good taking off point for season 2, in my opinion.
And again, this is where I said earlier, it's just simple storytelling done really well.
Yeah.
There was not a point in this where I was surprised by what happened,
Yeah.
other than the Boba Fett reveal at the very end,
Yeah.
when in the beginning he strings up Gore to a streetlight and says, "You will not die by my hand." I was like, "Oh, so something else is just gonna kill him. You're gonna get the information, and then he's gonna leave him there." And then it turns out the red-eyed creatures presumably are the things that devoured him. But I knew, I was like, "Okay, so he's gonna die, but it's gonna be some semantic thing
Yeah.
where you're not gonna kill him, but you're gonna be responsible."
Yeah.
When the townspeople and the Tusken Raiders team up to take on the Krayt Dragon, and they go, "Oh, the belly is the weakest point." Immediately, I was like, Mando's gonna get eaten by that thing. It's gonna be a Men in Black situation.
Oh,
He's gonna
I
blow it up from the
I was
inside.
gonna say it was Men in Black and Hercules.
Mhm. Turns out that's exactly what happened,
Mhm.
and I didn't care at all.
Yeah.
I was still enjoying the whole thing.
Exactly, and that's the thing, that's what I mean by it's all familiar plot points, and you almost know what's going to happen, but it's the way that it's done that is just so much fun. It's taking things we already know and putting them in a different context. It really was. I mean, like, the Tusken Raiders were basically the Native Americans to the Wild West town in a sense,
Yeah,
and that they had to work together
and it had humor
Yeah.
when, Mando's talking to the Sand People, and he goes to Timothy Olyphant, he goes, "I volunteered your village to fight, just to let you know."
Yeah, he's like, "What does he want me to do with this?" He wants you to drink it. He's like, "It smells like ass."
I didn't know they were gonna bring the Sand People back, though. I didn't think that was gonna happen.
Or the what's called the mechanic played by Amy Sedaris. I don't mind that they brought her back.
She got a good line too,
Yeah.
where she gets to go, "You can't get good help anymore. I don't know who to complain to about this."
Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed the first episode. I'm actually really excited for season 2.
So where do you think season 2 is going to go moving forward? Because the whole point of season 2 is going to be Mando and Baby Yoda trying to find his race. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Have they made it clear what his race is? Are they just talking about
No.
Jedi, or are they talking about
Like Yoda's
his
race.
his kind, like
Yeah,
Yoda's
his kind,
race?
yeah.
Because I don't think they've made that clear, or maybe I just wasn't paying attention.
No, I think they are looking for his Oh, no, because he does ask the armorer, "You want me to bring back this creature to a planet of wizard enemies," or something like that.
So that leads me to believe that they're bringing him back to the Jedi. But for all intents and purposes, the Jedi are extinct. Really, Luke Skywalker is going to start a new Jedi Academy, before the Force Awakens. But if they don't know who the Jedi are, then it's odd to be trying to bring him back to the Jedi. Now, this is where Boba Fett comes into play, because Boba Fett being brought back, well, we will find out, how he survived the Sarlacc pit, because he
Mhm.
gets killed in Return of the Jedi, killed, quote unquote. Obviously not. B, probably why he lost his armor, because Timothy Olyphant bought it from the Jawas. So why would he abandon that armor? It's very, very valuable. We find that out in the beginning,
Yeah.
right? When Mando's and Gore Varys are talking. He goes, "Your armor is very shiny. The price has gone way, way up in recent days."
Yeah.
But also, Boba Fett is a tie to when the Jedi were actually real and when they were around. So Boba Fett has ties to the larger Star Wars universe and has information that a lot of people probably don't have in this, because seemingly nobody, has Google in Star Wars, where they can just go, what happened to this? What happened to the Jedi? Well, they got all killed in a giant fighting Greek gladiator pit.
Well, and there's 2 things with that. One, going back to Ahsoka Tano, she was involved in the driving off of Darth Maul on Mandalore. So I have a feeling that she's going to play into, one, explaining the mythology behind the Darksaber and Moff Gideon's motivation. And then the other thing is that there's speculation that Baby Yoda right now is, for all intents and purposes, a Mandalorian. He is part of
He's a foundling now. He's been
Yeah,
brought
he's
in.
considered a
He
foundling.
is considered Din Djarin's. I'm just gonna keep calling him Mando.
Yeah.
He's considered Mando's child
Yeah,
at this point.
exactly, and the title might allude not to Din Djarin, but to Baby Yoda as the Mandalorian. So I think
I
that
never thought about it like that.
I hadn't thought about it either, like, I just happened to read it in
Do
something.
you think they lean too heavily on reaction shots to Baby Yoda in this episode?
That's all he had to do, and I felt like they were like, "Okay, well, we gotta show him somehow."
They really cut to him a lot, just going, "Oh, ooh,
My favorite though
mm."
is when he sees the whistling birds come out, and then he's like, "Oh, okay, time for me to
He
to dip."
he
It
closes
closes the little
his little
hatch.
basket.
Yeah, I thought that that was really funny. But no, I agree. I think it might have been a little, but they had to. I mean, that's what people were looking for. I hope they
Give the
don't.
people what they
Yeah,
want.
I hope they don't do that too much, where they're trying to play to the audience with Baby Yoda. But I think Baby Yoda's storyline is going to be very interesting to see how that develops.
I wonder how long they can actually pull this off to have just Mando and Baby Yoda, the 2 of them wandering around. I wonder how long it'll take for people to get fed up with it and go, "Just show me the Jedi now, man." I think this is I mean, you could speak to this better than I could with Lost, right?
Hmm.
If you just keep delaying and delaying and delaying everything, eventually the audience is just gonna go, "Come on, like, we got places to be. Just give me some answers."
I have a feeling they're taking their cue from the Clone Wars show, the animated one, because the Clone Wars show, the first season or two, I only watched about 2.5 seasons of it because of that reason, is that it was very isolated stories of these incidents within this larger war. But in the later seasons, it gets really good and kind of adds to the Star Wars canon. And there's like a lot of drama and political storylines that play into it. Yeah,
Machinations.
and you get a lot of the history of the Mandalorians, the Jedi, and kind of how they play in, and then Darth Maul, what happens to him after Episode 1, just all of that stuff. So I'm hoping that they accelerate it a little bit more than they did in Season 1. We'll likely see the broader story ramp up a little bit quicker than it did in the first season, because the first season you didn't really get an idea for kind of the through line until the last 3 episodes.
No, the middle episodes were very segmented
Hmm.
in this is the one where we're doing the Gina Carano planet, this is the one where we're doing prison ship heist.
Yeah,
You know, they are very segmented, and you could watch them individually in kind of any order
and
up
that makes
until
sense. Yeah.
up until probably, the last 3. Maybe even the last 2, because the 3rd to last episode was the prison heist.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, no, it was the last 2.
Now, you wouldn't know who Carl Weathers and Gina Carano are if you didn't if you didn't see them in order,
Yeah,
I guess. And I like Carl. I hope they bring Carl Weathers back.
they will.
I was so happy every time Carl Weathers showed up in his just big, big delivery of things where he's go, Mando.
And it's my favorite because I imagine Carl Weathers as the Carl Weathers from Arrested Development. It's hard for me to reconcile that they're 2 separate characters because it just feels as though he is coaching Tobias on the side of making The Mandalorian.
I love how he just enunciates every single word. He goes,
Yeah.
Mando, they all hate you, Mando.
And then when they're in the bar and, he's like, "You could have any job," and, like, that stuff, like, it's so
You'll be
over the
welcomed
top.
back with open arms.
I love his character, he's so much fun.
The dynamic between, especially at the end of season 1, him, Gina Carano, and then Taika Waititi as the voice
Yeah.
of IG-11. I really liked all of that. And then Nick Nolte as Quill. When they all came together, it was so strong. That's why it ended so strong on season 1.
And that's what I liked about the first season is that each episode, yes, was isolated as its own story, but in the second to last episode, he goes back and picks them up, and then you get this ragtag team of misfits. So I think that that's fun that they continue to plant things and allow them to continue to pay off, like Amy Sedaris and bringing her back. I appreciate that he's creating this network of characters that we're going to continue to see. This isn't the last time we're going to see Timothy Oliphant.
No, they leave it open specifically at the end, going, I hope our paths cross
Yeah,
again.
exactly. Yeah.
Which would be great because he was so good.
I love just his whole outfit. Everything is so cool.
I knew it was Timothy Oliphant right when he walked in the door too, because he's so lanky,
Yeah.
and you can just tell,
I couldn't tell, but when he took his helmet off, I was like, "Oh, I'm so glad it's Timothy Oliphant."
but when he does take his helmet off, it was a shock because they spent so
Yeah.
much time in season 1 setting up, no, the code of the Mandalorian is you don't let people see you without your helmet. All of Sanctuary, that was a lot of the conflict in that
Yeah.
was Mando and that woman and her going, "Can I see you without the helmet?" He goes, "No. I'm dedicated to this cause. I'm sorry."
And that's what makes that scene so effective without a word being said about it, because it speaks to the great job they've done in building the world and the rules that govern it. Because in that scene, you don't need superfluous dialogue that reiterates, "Oh, we're not supposed to take off our helmets." At that moment, all you needed was a look from a person who can't show any facial expression. And that we should really talk about Pedro Pascal. I mean, he's just so expressive without,
His
I
face.
mean, he doesn't have his face. Like, he's creating this language for this character where you don't need to see his face to know what he's thinking. And that's what I appreciate about him.
And he got to do sign language with the sand people.
Yes, of course, which is really funny. He says, what are you telling him?" He's like, "I'm telling him the same thing I'm telling you."
The sand people are easily startled, but they'll soon be back, and in greater numbers. I can do Bridge on the River Kwai too if we're just doing Alec Guinness quotes. Blow that bridge up over there. Bridge on the River Kwai doesn't really have a lot of iconic lines.
Any parting thoughts, Joe, for The Mandalorian?
I'm so excited. I'm so glad that this is back, and it came at the perfect time because a lot of shows that were week to week have just ended.
Yeah.
We talked about The Boys, we talked about Ted Lasso, which was gone, and I didn't have anything to do with my Fridays now.
Yeah.
I can't go anywhere because coronavirus is coming back to destroy us all. The Mandalorian gets to distract me from that.
Yes. I'm excited to see how they explore the broader world of Star Wars, which is something I've been wanting to see for quite a while. But I think that does it for this episode. And as always, we'd love to hear from you guys. Did you watch season 1 of The Mandalorian, or did you catch season 2's first episode? If so, did you agree or disagree with anything we discussed? Catch us next week as we explore our favorite on-screen duos in film and television. As we've mentioned before, we are shooting to reach 1,000 subscribers on YouTube to become partners, so if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing. If you have any ideas for a theme you'd like us to discuss, or a film, TV show, anything pop culture, let us know on YouTube, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find all those links on channel8.5.com. That's channel8.5. completely spelled out.com.
We have new episodes every Thursday. Until next time, my name is Joe Galena.
And I'm Andrew Hanna, and this is Channel 8.5.